All right. It is Sunday. We excited? Yeah, absolutely. So, well, yesterday we had the opportunity to celebrate a great achievement, a tremendous experiment that has been going pretty darn well, right? Um, in the history of the world, no or community, people group, whatever you want to call it, has ever been able to succeed the way the United States of America has. And yet, if you pay attention to what's being said around the world, oftentimes it's a lot of grumbling, right? We're just a mess of people, aren't we? We never seem to be completely happy with what we've got. And sometimes I think that's because we don't consider the cost. We're going to be reading from Matthew chapter 10 today. Surprise. We're still on our series that's called Go, but today we're going to be looking at part one of what the cost is. All right. So, Matthew chapter 10, we'll read 21 through 28 right now. We'll be back into it a little bit later, but we're going to be talking about what is the cost? The cost of being a disciple, the cost of being a follower, the cost of living for Christ, right? And there's two parts to this. First, the why, and then the actual cost. Today, hopefully, by the time we're done, we'll understand the why a little bit better. Matthew chapter 10, verse 21 through 28, and it reads this way. Follow with me if you will. Brother will betray brother to death, father his child. Children will rebel against their parents and have them put to death. You will be hated by everyone because of me, but the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. When you are persecuted in one place, flee to another. Truly I tell you, you will not finish going through the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. The student is not above the teacher, nor servant above his master. It is enough for a student to be like their teacher, and servants like their masters. If the head of the house has been called Beelzebub, how much more the members of his household? So do not be afraid of them, for there is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known. What I tell you in the dark, speak in the daylight. What is whispered in your ear, proclaim from the rooftops. Do not be afraid of those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather, be afraid of the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell. So often, we as Christians, and yes, I did the quotation marks there, we as Christians discuss the Bible in terms of what we must do, what God requires of us, what we can expect from God, but almost never do we spend any real time discussing and considering what it costs us. We spend a lot of time talking about what it cost Jesus, what it cost God. Very rarely do we look at what it costs us. But the Bible is actually full of admonishment for us to count that cost, to understand what it costs, to know what we should be willing to give, to pay, to give up, to sacrifice. There's lots of different ways it's expressed, isn't it? Jesus told us the cost is really, really high. His words to us in Luke 14:25 through 33. I know what I'm doing. In Luke 14:25 through 33, Jesus covers all of that. I would encourage you to go look that up later today. Make a note for yourself and go look that up. We'll look at just a small portion of it, 28 through 33. He says, consider this before you step out on your own. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation and are not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule you, saying, this person began to build and wasn't able to finish. Or suppose a king is about to go to war against another king. Won't he first sit down and consider whether he is able to, with 10,000 men, opposing the one coming against him with 20,000? If he's not able, he'll send a delegation while the other is still a long way off and will ask for terms of peace. In the same way, those of you who do not give up everything you have cannot be my disciple. That's a pretty harsh message, isn't it? Pretty rough. Clearly, Jesus didn't really mean that, did he? He couldn't have meant we give everything up for him. He could, and he did. And if you're not willing to do it, you can't be his disciple. That's what he said. Those were his words. But that's uncomfortable. And nobody wants to hear it. And so, more often in churches, we hear a message of just come to Jesus, tell him you love him, and tell him you're sorry, and you don't have to worry about the rest. And I get it. Because we want to hear this message of do this and do that, and you'll be okay. Just follow the rules well enough, and you'll be okay. Just be the good guy. Feel like you've done enough to overcome your bad, and you'll be okay. That's what we want to hear. Matter of fact, that's what most religions teach. And yet, that is not what we're taught in Scripture. It can seem really discouraging, and yet it's a key aspect to what the good news is that you and I are supposed to share with the world. Yes, the kingdom of heaven is here. Yes, you have the right to have the Holy Spirit dwell in you. Yes, you get to be in heaven someday forever. Yes, there is power. There is authority. There is the opportunity to see great things in your life. All of that is true. But there's also a cost that's associated with it. It is a key aspect to the good news. But so many people reject the idea of it being good news if it costs you something. That would be like saying somebody giving you a car for a really great deal. Like they look at you and say, I know you need a car, and so I'm going to bless you. What do you got in your wallet right now? And you say $32. Okay, what's in your pocket? Because, if you're anything like me, I got a few bucks down there someplace. Not really, I don't. But, the idea might be true because you went to the drive-thru and stuffed it in your pocket instead of putting it in your wallet, right? And you say, well, I got another $3 in there. He goes, okay, $36 is what I'm going to sell you the car for. That's a great deal. Right. It's a great deal. I'm going to keep the car in my name for the next 2 years, but you got to carry full coverage insurance on it. It's a 2017 Toyota Camry. Is that a good deal for you? If you carry full coverage, you pay $36 right now and carry full coverage insurance for the next 5 years, 3 years, whatever it is. And at the end of that time, I'll sign the title off to you. It's yours free and clear. Is that a good deal? But it costs you something, doesn't it? Now, I don't know about you guys, but if I pay $32 for a car, probably not carrying full coverage insurance on it, am I? I am going bare minimum, and if I know some of you, you might even buy the insurance and let it lapse after a month just so you could get the tags. None of us have ever done that, have we? Yes, I have. Yes, I have. I don't do it anymore, but I've done it in my past because money was tight, right? It costs you something, right? Well, the good news should cost us something, shouldn't it? But why? Why is it part of the good news, and what is that cost? We're going to talk about both of those over the next 2 weeks, primarily looking at why it's part of the good news and why it's necessary to be part of the good news today. How many of you are aware that the fastest growing religion in the world for the last over 10 years and projected to be even greater by 2060 is the religion of Islam? Do you know why? Any idea? They killed everybody. Nope, that is not a good, they are attracting people not out of fear. Brandon, you experience this in real time in real life, right? You're in an environment that it just prospers, right? What's one of the big reasons why people gravitate to it? Well, because you don't have to believe in Jesus. That's a big one. Another reason is it's very structured and you know where you stand. Right? They have a very structured, you do this, you do this, you do this, you get, the more faithful you are, the more Allah will bless you. Right? You have a very clear understanding of what is expected of you. Right? And that, from a human standpoint, is what we all want. It's a core principle inside of us that we want structure and understanding. We want a criteria to live by. Even to the point of wanting the structure beyond wanting comfort. And with Christianity, we're taught that choice is the most important thing to God. We're given free will. We have choice. It's the most important thing to God. I disagree with that at all. It is one of the most important things to God that we choose Him. Absolutely. The problem is when we make that association, we also associate it with it being the most important aspect of Christianity. Therefore, we figure that it's the most important thing for us as well. It is one of the most important things for God. It should not be the most important thing for you. If we make choice the most important thing, it leaves us with an unstructured view of our religion, our faith system. It really leaves us with the idea anything goes, all paths lead to heaven. As long as you're willing to say, I'm sorry, you're okay. You just stick with it, and you're going to be fine. But it definitely doesn't give you the aspect of there's a cost for me to live inside of it, does it? When I was in school, trade school, high school, the couple of college courses I took, I hated the classes where the teachers were absolutely dictatorial. They dictated everything. It had to be the way the textbook was and nothing else. Matter of fact, all of my seminary stuff that I did, I was so grateful for the fact that my mentor through that whole process gave me leeway, because had I been in a traditional college environment, I would have failed, because they required you to fall in line with whatever textbook they were using. Oftentimes the textbook was written by the teacher. And so the professor had a vested interest in what was written there, and so you had to follow along. And if you disagreed in any way, or you had life experience that said, it doesn't quite work that way, there was something wrong with you, right? I hated those classes where it was so structured that I had to follow along. Although those were the classes where I learned the material the best, because there was no leniency with it, right? I would end up being able to pass the course because of the fact that I had to fall in line, right? Doesn't mean it was useful, but I knew the material, right? I was required to pay closer attention, and I had to fall into the structure. And the reality was, I could achieve, if I did that, to their expectation. That is often what we see in any other faith system besides Christianity. You follow the structure and they give you kudos and you're okay, even though they never promise you anything from it other than keep doing better. When I was in school, I also loved the classes where the teachers had fun and made all of the subject matter interesting. The problem is, Many of those classes, I learned nothing about the subject itself, but I learned a lot of good, cool stuff because we knew those teachers and we could get them off track on anything except what we were supposed to study. We walked away. Those were great classes. We had a lot of fun. We knew nothing about the subject matter at all. But the courses where the teachers, the professors, had actual life experience with the subject matter and could take all of that coursework and make a structure around it and the application of it, that's where I learned to live life. That's where I was able to excel when I walked away from those classes. They were all about the subject matter and how it functioned in my life, how it functioned in the world. I can remember one of my electronics classes because I actually, by trade, am an electronics technician. That's what I have my training in, electronics. Several years worth of training and many more years worth of experience in the trade. And the only reason I'm stopped working in that trade today, honestly, is because nobody gets stuff repaired anymore. There's no money in it. But in those classes, those teachers had experience both in the field and with the coursework. And so they could teach the logic, but they could also tell you that in the real world, the logic of the book isn't going to work that way. You're going to run into, more often than not, the fact that the engineer followed the book, and you in the field will have to go, yeah, you're an idiot. Now let's fix it. And that's what a technician's job was to fix what the engineer designed, developed, and produced so that it actually functioned in the real world. See, structure is necessary for us to feel connected and needed. It's why Islam grows so fast. It's a very direct and structured environment where you are connected with others and you feel needed within that structure. But it's also the reason why so many other things work as well. That structure and that connectedness is a major part of the human condition. We need to be connected and useful. It's why we in recovery find real release from our addictions when we apply a structure that's wrapped around a program or people. Many work the structure with the 12 steps. I am a firm believer in them. But you can't do it alone. You have to have other people around you. It's why some people are even able to make the system work for themselves for a really, really long time, even though their higher power isn't anything real. And it's definitely not Jesus Christ. They're able to stay in the program and working it because the structure and the feeling needed keeps them connected. Structure and usefulness are as much a human need as air and food. The only difference is without it, you don't necessarily physically die. But you will find your soul, your spirit, dying more and more if you don't have it. Matter of fact, we read it in what we first read today. Do not be afraid of those who will kill the body but cannot kill the soul. Rather, be afraid of the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Without that structure, you find yourself decreasing in your soul, your spirit, the core of who you are. Here's the thing, guys. Most of you are aware because most of you have some codependent nature in you, okay? And I'm speaking from personal experience. It's why when you receive real praise from a safe person, you get that huge dopamine boost and you want to make them happy again. Right? See, dopamine is that thing that your brain produces that says, this is a necessary thing for life. You need it. Praise, following a structure, and being useful gives you that dopamine boost. It's useful. It's necessary for you. Unfortunately, for many of us, the reason we fell into the addictive nature, addictive habit pattern, whatever, is because that area that we thought was giving us that dopamine boost became dangerous because people used that as a weapon. We would let our guard down as the dopamine went up, and they would use it against us in some way. And so we stopped trusting that dopamine and needed to get it from someplace else. Unfortunately, the things we chased tended to produce the dopamine in really negative ways that actually could overcome and make us not trust the dopamine boost we get from food, from all the other things that are necessary in life. We even learn to not trust the closest people to us, and we start rejecting them as well. And we start feeding that dopamine need with whatever else we can get, and we start to trust that instead. That becomes a sense of security. And then as soon as that becomes our sense of security, we can't interact with the world in any real way because what we think is safe gives us the greatest dopamine is now actually detrimental to us. It becomes our consistent, our constant. And we don't pay attention to the cost. See, we reject cost as something less than good. If it's good, it's free. Or it doesn't hurt. It doesn't injure. It doesn't feel bad. If any of those things are true, it can't be good. Therefore, it can't be good news. Tell me I'm wrong. You all know it's true. So how can the cost be part of the good news, an integral part of the real good news. We constantly are on guard against all those things that make us feel less, make us feel pain, make us feel like we have to sacrifice or give up the things we like. Matter of fact, I hear it all the time in the Christian world from Christian people. God wouldn't make me give that up. He knows that's my only enjoyment. I've even said it. But finding true structure, especially when it requires us to hold tighter to it than the desires of our heart, is what humans crave the most. But we've trained ourselves to be selfish. Over a long period of time, we've gotten really good at looking out for number one. And Christianity is everything except that. It's looking out for everyone but number one. Love one another as I have loved you, Jesus said. Jesus understood the principle of needing structure. He understood the principle of needing people. But he also understood the fact that we needed to know how to apply it in our lives, in real world environments. He understood that every other faith system the world has ever seen relied on dogmatic structure, just like what Islam produces. Something that's followable, something that you can add extra rules to so you don't make any mistakes in the rules that are there. We know we want that. We also need to know how it's applied. Like in electronics, you know that there is an absolute when it comes to voltage compared to current and resistance. The formula is absolute until you add the real world into it and you add in unknowable variables like heat or cold or other components that create some variable like frequency or things like that. And now all of a sudden you've got variables in the real world that absolute needs to take into account. We have variables in life. You woke up this morning, you got out of bed and you twisted your ankle, and now you can't walk, but you know you're supposed to be in the fellowship, in the sanctuary. You know you're supposed to be gathered together. Now what do? Well, the absolute says just get up and walk on it, which could damage it more. Or go to the doctor in this church. Real world variables might mean you need the walker today. I need the cane today. I need to take some Tylenol to reduce the swelling. Real world variables, right? Well, Jesus made sure that he taught from the aspect of real world variables. You remember how I said the classes I hated were the ones I learned the subject matter the most? They were also the ones that I tended to take the next course Math 101, Math 102, Math 103, whatever, right? Because the structure was there and I knew what was expected. And I knew I could succeed if I followed the rules. That never applied, by the way, to English. The only English classes I ever took were the ones that were required. If I had an elective that I could take instead of English, I took it. Shop was my favorite. They were stable. Math, science, things like that. Although the classes that I actually applied to my life and still do today were the classes that created the structure around living it out, around living that subject. One of those classes was my government class, my senior year in high school, and my economics class, my senior year in high school. Two classes that most everybody hated but had to take. I would have taken those every year because there was real world experience that was taught in my classes. That teacher did a great job. Not only had us learn the subject matter, but then participate in it. We had mock elections. We had opportunity to create our Senate and our House and what that looked like. In our economics class, we were given a fake dollar amount and a newspaper because we didn't have the internet back then, and told to take that dollar amount and invest it for the next 4 weeks. Trade them. Do everything that you would do on an open market and see where you came out. Real world experience. And how real world life outside of your own experience impacted you. Those were incredible things. In a real way, all the other faith systems in the world create a culture around learning as much as you can and following it exactly the way it's designed. But it keeps people stuck. The Old Testament actually shows us example after example after example of trying to follow the rules. And James tells us in James 2:10 this: for whoever keeps the whole law yet stumbles at just one point is guilty of breaking it all. Structure is great, but you'll never be inside of it completely. Because the world you live in is a mess. And it doesn't take account for every variable you might run into. Paul actually said that the law only points out our sin. Romans 3:19 through 20. Now we know that whatever the law says, it says to those who are under the law, so that every mouth may be silenced and the whole world held accountable to God. Therefore, no one will be declared righteous in God's sight by the works of the law. Rather, through the law, we become conscious of our sin. Basically, they're saying the structure of the law is good, but if you're not living it out in the real environment, putting God as your focus, no matter the cost, you're stuck. You're going to die. You're outside of God. See, all those teachers could give me structure of the material. Teach the way it is applied to life is a different thing altogether. Not necessarily because they didn't know the subject matter, but because they didn't necessarily know how to live it out. There's a saying in the academic world: Those that know the subject well teach. Those that can do the subject matter do it. Very few cross between. I find that to be true. But Jesus taught from the principle of application. Let me ask you a real question. I hope you understand this, especially now. You can know a subject matter really, really well, inside and out. You can quote it. You can speak it. Inside the church, I see this all the time. People that can quote chapter and verse all over the place, but have no practical way to apply it in their own lives. You ever see that? It's true, right? Often it feels like it's contrary to what they live. They speak it, but there's no application at all in the way they live their lives. Matter of fact, those are the ones often where they'll come to me and say, I'm really struggling with this. And I'll say, okay, what are you doing about it? And they'll quote me all kinds of verses that apply to it. They're good. How do you apply that in your life? I don't know. Because you know it, but you don't apply it in a practical way. It's not clean. So therefore, I don't know how to put it into practice in my life. Somebody struggling with pornography can quote me every verse there is about fornication and adultery and all of those things. But they have no idea how to apply it into their life because the focus is about the rules instead of the rule maker. Christianity is an image of application. And it's the main reason why the cost is so much a part of the good news. It's because it gives us the subject matter, the structure. It gives us the community. And it gives us the real life environment that it has to be applied to. Jesus sent out the 12 disciples with the instructions of what to do. He had lived with them. He had taught them. He had given them all of the rules. But he also told them what the environment was going to be like that they were going to be expected to live it out in. Matthew 6:10, 16 through 25. As we wrap this up. I'm sending you out like sheep among wolves. Therefore be as shrewd as snakes and innocent as doves. Be on your guard. You will be handed over to the local. You will be hated by everyone because of me. But the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. When you're persecuted in one place, flee to another. Truly I tell you, you will not finish going through the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. The student is not above the teacher, nor a servant above his master. It is enough for a student to be like their teachers and servants like their masters. If the head of the house has been called Beelzebub, how much more the members of his household? The good news also deals with the cost. We will and are in a messed up place where we experience the mess of real life, and the cost is giving it all no matter what. And we have the opportunity, and we're warned ahead of time. He says, don't make that choice without weighing that cost. Next week, we're going to look a little bit closer and what that really looks like, what that cost really is. But I hope now you understand why that cost is such a huge part of what the good news really is. Because the good news isn't just someday, it's today. And you live in a real world with a mess, both you and the rest of the people you interact with. And you're operating as a follower of Jesus Christ. And you should be a prime example of what that looks like, because you're expected to be a teacher as well. Today we have the opportunity to partake in the elements of communion, to remember the cost that Jesus paid for this good news. And in doing that, we should examine that cost